everybody dreams of making the NHL, and it's hard work, don't get me wrong, but these guys have fun along the way with it as well. The chips will fall where they may. You never know. You go all the time up and down, and you play well, you don't play well, you play at different levels. At the end of the day, it's got to be fun. Wherever you're playing, make it the most fun environment you can, and then that's how you're going to play to your best ability.
What's going on, guys? This is Braden from Advancement Hockey Advising here, and today we got a really cool interview here with Andrew Allen, who's an NHL scout. Now, funny enough, Andrew and I grew up in the same small town of Vanklekill, Ontario. It's crazy how small of a world hockey is, and he actually bumped into my dad a couple weeks ago, and that's how he came on to this podcast here. So really excited to have him on. Andrew has a great background in hockey, so he grew up in the same small town as me, played AAA hockey here, and then got an NCAA D1 scholarship to the University of Vermont as the starting goalie as a freshman at UVM. So great accomplishment there. Played some stints in the ECHL, AHL, and then from there, after his pro career, he went to Japan to coach and came back, was a goalie coach for several NHL teams, and now with the Seattle Kraken, and now he's moved into the role as scout and lives close to home again now. Overall, Andrew has a great hockey background. He'll drop a ton of knowledge bombs in this interview here, so I'm really excited for you guys to gain a lot of value out of these. Now, before we dive into the interview, as always, what would an AHA video be without me to absolutely ask you to destroy that like button, and if you're new here, consider hitting that subscribe button and notification bell so you never miss another video moving forward. All right, let's dive right into the video here with Andrew. All right, so Andrew, glad to have you here. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, for sure. It's a pleasure. So for those of you who don't know, Andrew is from the same small town as me back in Vanklekill here. So glad to have him on here. And maybe we can just start with, you introducing yourself to the viewers, your hockey background, what you're doing now. Sure,
yeah. So my name's Andrew Allen, and like you said, I grew up in a 1,600 person town of Vanklekill, Ontario. I actually grew up out on the farm, and such a great spot to live and to grow up. And I am a goaltending scout for the Seattle Kraken, the new NHL team. I actually was a goaltending coach in Seattle last year. So in our first season, got to be a part of the team and all the firsts, all the new everything, the new buildings and the first home game and the first everything. So it was a great experience. So that's what I'm doing now. I grew up, like I said, in Vanklekill, and played hockey, minor hockey in Vanklekill my whole life. I played junior C in Vanklekill as well. I played some junior B hockey in Metcalf, and then played junior A in Hawkesbury, the closest neighboring town to us. And I was able to get a NCAA scholarship and went to the University of Vermont from there, and signed with the Florida Panthers out of school, and played a few years pro, up and down through the East Coast League, American League, and a little bit of NHL. And then when I retired, moved to Ottawa and got a government job, but I was still dabbling in hockey, and that's kind of how I got back into coaching. I got to coach in Japan with their national program for a while, and then I was the developmental goaltending scout for the Chicago Blackhawks through two of their Stanley Cups in 13 and 15, and then got the Buffalo Sabres head goaltending coach job. And that's what moved. We live in Niagara Falls, Ontario now, and that's what moved me to Niagara Falls with my family. And then from Buffalo, ended up in Seattle. So that's the quick synopsis. We can go into deeper, whatever you'd like, but that's the quick synopsis on how I got to where I am today.
Yeah, for sure. Like, you're laughing now because it's quite the background, so there's so many questions that I could dive in on. I guess the first one is, back in the day, I know NCAA wasn't nearly as popular as going straight to major junior. Why did you kind of go through the junior A NCAA route instead of the major junior route?
Well, it's an easy answer for me because I had no OHL opportunities at all. I never spoke to an OHL team. I was a bit of a late bloomer. I was a big, tall, lanky goalie that kind of grew into my body, I think, a little later. So I never had the major junior option. That I know it's such a question now, and which way is better and everything for kids now. And the way I see it is, if you have options, that's a great decision you're going to have to make. And every kid's different. But I loved my path, but it really was the only path that I had. And I didn't get my scholarship till my 20-year-old year in junior A in January. So I was right in the wire. But University of Vermont was such a great spot, and I had a great 4 years there, and still stay in touch and have a lot of friends from my time there.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, that's crazy how right at the end, January in your 20-year-old year that you got it. And that goes to show like nowadays, like D1s, usually they'll recruit pretty young, but there's still guys that they pick up late like that. Like if a guy decommits, if a guy gets injured, long term, whatever, there's still people that they can pick up. So it's really important that even if you're in your 19, 20-year-old year, to still keep going forward, because I've seen it time and time again where guys get committed late like that.
Oh yeah, no, so for me, it was actually, they were kind of, Vermont was actually looking for a bit of an older goalie, a goalie that could come in and start as a freshman, because Tim Thomas, I don't know if you remember that name, but he ended up winning a Stanley Cup with Boston, and he was the goalie just before me there, and he had started for 4 years straight. So they didn't have a lot of depth or guys that had played a lot of minutes. So I had a chance going there, as long as I earned it, to be the starter as a freshman, and it ended up working out that way. So there's different situations, and schools are looking, they're always looking for high-end talent, but sometimes the later guys come in and can make an impact right away. So there's so many different paths. I guess that's my biggest word of advice is never, just keep following the dream. As long as you're working hard towards it, go until you can't go anymore. And I was close. I went to the University of Ottawa part-time, still trying to get a scholarship. And if I wouldn't have got one, I would have continued in Canadian University. And that would have been just another life experience for me. But I was lucky enough to get the scholarship, and that kind of kept my hockey dreams going by going down to the NCAA.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's great advice, to keep going until you can't go anymore, because so many kids, like, I don't see that many players regretting playing an extra year or two of hockey, but I see a lot that regret at like 17 or 18 years old, where they stop, and then 5 years, 6 years, 7 years down the road, they regret stopping back in the day. Because once you stop, it's almost impossible to get back to a competitive level, So
yeah, for sure. And I had friends, like my graduating class in high school, all my buddies, they had gone on to university. So then I actually went back to high school for a year, and then didn't get a scholarship that year, and then went to Ottawa U part-time. But all my buddies were like almost done their second year of university. So it does enter your head that you're like, geez, maybe I should just get on with my life. But I'm so happy that I stuck with it. And because just like you said, I had no regrets. If I wouldn't have got a scholarship at 20, I knew at that point it was meant to be. But I figured I'll play as long as I can and see where it takes me. And I was able to get a whole new experience and continue my hockey career because of it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I had the exact same mindset where, at 18, 19 years old, I was thinking, it's like, all my buddies, they're in school, like, am I falling behind? But at the end of the day, like, what's another 2 or 3 years? You're gonna end up doing the same schooling anyways. You might be a little bit older than everyone, but that's okay. And I wouldn't trade the experience I had for the world. So I think it makes a lot of sense. Now, coming in as a starter in NCAA hockey, like where you're expected to be the starter as a freshman, how did you kind of handle that pressure?
A great question. I didn't have a lot of goalie coaching. That's another thing that's different nowadays. Kids have goalie coaches when they're really, really young. I didn't have a lot of goalie coaching until I got to Vermont. And from a physical standpoint, I was ready. From a mental standpoint, it all of a sudden felt like, well, you're on scholarship, so you're basically being paid to be here. Not that you're getting any money, you're getting a free education, but the pressure to perform increased. And I had a goalie coach at Vermont, a man by the name of Terry Lovelet, who I stay in touch with to this day, who was good for me on the ice from a drill standpoint, but I would say even better for me just to have somebody with a goalie mindset to talk to. He just kept me even keeled. And he said, there's nights where I look great, and he would try to kind of bring me down. So not down, like make sure I don't get too high because I'd get inconsistent and then I'd be really low. And he was so good at kind of talking me through things and just kind of keeping me that even keel. And the more consistent you can be at the higher levels, the more success you're going to have. And I did feel the pressure for sure when I was starting there. And I was able to, I also worked with a sports psychologist, and she was great too, to use that pressure, use that nervous energy, use it as a positive. And it was one of those things that I got into a routine where the excitement of it all became it helped me perform instead of hampering me. But when I first got there, I always felt a little tight. And then as a goalie, you didn't react naturally. So I learned a lot in my time at Vermont on how to deal with pressure and how to deal with expectation.
100%. A lot of good gold nuggets of wisdom there, especially it's very subtle, but you mentioned excitement instead of nervousness. You know, I feel like they both feel very similar, but it's the story we tell ourselves in our head regarding it. And if you frame it as excitement, typically you can lean into it more and you feel more confident and you feel looser out there versus nervousness, feel more uptight, you know? So for me, that trick actually worked wonders when I was getting ready for games.
Really, yeah. I just think it's the same energy. It's
Yeah.
just how you play it to yourself in your head.
No, 100%, 100%. So it's cool, gold nugget of wisdom there. But I want to kind of touch base on Japan as well. So how'd that kind of all come about when you started? Was it scouting or goalie coaching in Japan?
It was coaching, and it's a Vanklekill connection. Mark Mahan, who
I know Mark actually. Yeah, I ran into him.
born and raised in Vanklekill, he came to me my last year when I was playing in the East Coast League. Last year that I played pro hockey, he came to me and asked what my plans were, and he was coaching the Japanese men's national team at the time, but still living in Vanklekill at the time. Anyway, so I when I stopped playing, he said, I may have an opportunity for you to consult for our national program. And it was the men's team, women's team, junior teams. And I jumped in. I had a government job with Natural Resources Canada in Ottawa that I had a little bit of a stable base, and then I was able to do this kind of on the side, and work would let me go away for a couple weeks at a time, and I would go to Japan and whatever national team where I was with, say I was with the women's national team at the time, whatever town we were in Japan, we would do goalie camps for kids. And it was just such an unbelievable experience. They treated me so well. And it's such a culture that they crave knowledge, and they're so intelligent and very coachable athletes. And I learned so much and saw so much of the world because of that Japanese consulting job. It was amazing. And I only stopped it because I got the Chicago Blackhawks developmental goalie coach job, and I just couldn't do it because I love doing it. I could see myself still doing it to this day if I hadn't changed jobs at the time.
Yeah, it sounds like quite the gig. And did you get the Chicago job from the Japan job? Like, how did you end up going that route?
So it was not from it helped me that I was coaching at that level with the Japanese national program. My last year that I played with the Trenton Titans in the East Coast League, we won a championship, and my head coach Mike Haviland and assistant coach Ted Dent both were in Chicago's system at this time afterwards. Mike Haviland was assistant coach with the Blackhawks, and Ted Dent was the head coach in Rockford of the American League team. And Ted Dent actually said, send me your resume out of the blue. And I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, well, our developmental goalie coach just left, and he goes, I'd love to work with you again, and send me your resume. So that's how it started. And I got to interview with the goalie coach of the Blackhawks at the time, Stefan Waite. Again, the Vanklekill helping me out, living in a very Franco, Ontario area, knowing French. This Stefan Waite is from Sherbrooke, Quebec, and had no clue that I spoke French. And I went to meet him for dinner one night, and I didn't speak a word of English for the first half an hour of the interview. And you could just tell right away, he's like, wow. He goes, I didn't see this coming. So your background, everything you do growing up can really help you. And in that situation, I think I made a very good first impression, and then I ended up getting the job and got to work in one of the original 6 franchise organizations. So that's how that kind of came about.
Yeah, no, that's pretty cool. So you've worked there, like you've worked as a goalie coach, scout for a long time now at the NHL level. So what would you say, like to kids out there looking for advice on the top things to work on as goalies? What would you say are the biggest things that might not be so obvious or might be obvious, but what are the biggest skills that draw you towards certain goalies?
Well, I always look, and it's funny because goaltending, everybody says, oh, just stop the puck or worry about stopping the puck. And the biggest thing for me is feet. If you are confident on your edges, if you are balanced, you're putting yourself in position to make saves, to recover, to put yourself into position for the next save. And so feet, skating, edge control, however you want to say it, that is for me the first thing that I notice in a goaltender. And the other one for me is reaction speed. And that's basically how you make the saves and how quickly react. Are you getting surprised by shots, or are you can tell that a goal is anticipating well and reacting well whenever the release happens. So those are the two biggest areas, and everything else kind of comes around it for me. And that's, size is something you can't teach. Size is something you can't control, but size is a box to check. Your competitive fire, your body language, that plays a big role for me as well. How do you handle pressure situations? How do you handle after giving up a bad goal? Everybody, you're always being watched. So that's important for me. And then just then the read of the game and how you move and how do you play certain situations. So that all comes in. But for me, skating, really for goalies, skating, really, really work your feet, really, really work to get more confident on your edges and moving around the net. That's the biggest advice I could give for young goalies moving up.
And for reaction speed and skating being the two top skills, what are like the highest yield drills that that could help goalies work on it? I know it's not so straightforward, but reaction speed, I feel like you got a couple of drills that in the back of your hand that you know quite well.
Well, reaction speed you can really work a lot on off of the ice. And you see goalies juggling, you see goalies throwing balls off walls. I think reaction speed, anything you can do with your hands where you can be like throwing balls off walls and having people throw balls from behind you and reacting. It's all about tracking. So it's all about how your eyes watch pucks into your hands and into your feet and into your stomach. So off the ice, from a reaction speed standpoint, all that kind of stuff, juggling balls off walls, doing it while you're off balance on a ball or on one foot, and you can put sunglasses on. They have all these crazy things you can do, but for the most part, just simple, repetitive throwing and catching. Young kids playing baseball, playing tennis, just be an athlete, and reaction speed really, really helps. From a skating standpoint, from an edge control standpoint, it's all those like crease work drills you do, small movements. Our skating happens within the crease for the most part. So it's not straight line skating up and down the ice. It's being able to push and get set into position. And you can change the pattern in the net. You can do an X pattern, a Y pattern, a W pattern, whatever pattern you want. Pick something in your head and do the drill and do it properly. Don't be all over the place. Drive and set, drive and set, drive and set. Then you add in butterflies, you add in slides. But it all comes from little crease work, little movement. And for young goalies, sometimes you don't have the net. Sometimes there's stuff going on before practice and people are firing pucks all over. But find a spot on the side somewhere. Put 2 pucks down. Just move back and forth between the 2 pucks. Very simple things that get your feet going. And then as you get better at it, push your feet, get out of your comfort zone, go faster so that you can get better and better at it. I know that's a kind of a big spiel, but footwork can be really, really done well on the ice. Reaction speed, you can get guys shooting on you all the time, but ball work and stuff off the ice is very easy and cost effective. It doesn't cost you anything to bounce a ball off the side of your wall somewhere. Outside, don't ruin your parents' house.
Yeah, don't get mom and dad mad at you. But yeah, no, it's funny you mentioned those drills for the side to side skating on the ice. One of the best goalies I ever played with, honestly, he would do that before every game. Before every practice, he'd do that, the really basic side to side stuff. I don't know if that's what made him great, but honestly, I saw him do it all the time and he was very, very good. So it's just funny you mentioned that. And then for the reaction speed, not only is that good for goalies, but for players too. Any kind of like things that can make you a better athlete. So playing baseball, soccer, like all these different types of things, they'll make you react quicker. And as a player, it could also be very useful. So while it's very useful for goalies, it could be useful for almost anybody going on the ice.
And it's fun too, because you're not just 100% focused on hockey 365 days a year. Like it's when you don't have ice, when you don't get out and be active, and have fun with it. And I think kids improve a lot more whenever it's fun for them. And that's why playing something different, trying a different sport really, really helps as well.
Yep, 100%. In terms of like, I know we touched on it a little bit, but I want to dive a little bit deeper. In terms of like a player or goalie's character, what's the biggest thing you look for?
For me, it's compete. And what I mean by that is you can see a lot from a goalie in practice, because a lot of times drills and practice aren't designed for goalies, and there's a lot of rapid fire situations and a lot of small area games where it's really to the player's advantage. And you can tell a lot from a goalie if he competes, no matter if he's getting scored on or not, if his body language is good, if he's still going hard at the end as he was at the beginning, even if he'd been scored on 12 times. Or do you see a goalie that kind of, for lack of a better word, quits? And I think that's a huge character trait for me. If you can't handle it in practice, when the going gets tough in a game situation, how are you going to be able to handle it then? So you want, from a goaltending standpoint, I've been in a lot of hockey rooms, locker rooms. Players, you want a goalie that players want to play for. And what I mean by that is that know that the goalie is going to do everything they can for them, and they will reciprocate and do the same and go, if their back's up against the wall, you want somebody that you can trust. And so a goalie builds trust with his work ethic and his character and how he works hard in practice and how sometimes he does things in practice that are for the players and doesn't complain and doesn't look with his bad body language. I think it goes a long way. And I've seen a lot of goalies that have made pretty damn good careers because guys want to play for them. And that's all comes from work ethic and character, in my opinion.
And a great goalie like that could really be the difference maker between a team winning a championship and a team just not going anywhere. That kind of character trait really makes a huge difference, especially like the goalies you're talking about are the goalies that at the end of practice, when everyone's pretty tired, players want to do shootouts. It's that goalie that's really competitive and is going to try and win every single shootout. It's not every goalie that's like that. I remember going against them and they just kind of let you score. They wouldn't really try. The really good ones are the ones that just kept going till the very end to try and stop everybody.
I have an example, actually, a goalie by the name of Carter Hutton, who played. I had him in Chicago in the minors, and then I also had him in Buffalo in the NHL. And Carter Hutton just retired this past season, but he's a Thunder Bay kid who went the college route, went to UMass Lowell, signed with San Jose out of college in the minors. And then after 1 year, he came to Chicago, and we started him in the East Coast League. You could just tell even in training camp that he had this fire, and guys seemed to like him. But anyways, he started in the East Coast League. When he came up to the American League, he basically took over the starting job because everybody around him wanted him to be in the net. I used to have guys come up in morning skate, who's starting tonight? Huts? Yeah. Okay, good. And it was all because of how he handled himself. And that translated into an NHL job. He backed up Pekka Rinne in Nashville for years. And everybody wanted this kid to be there. And he worked so hard and was such a good person off the ice and helping guys. And he just was an incredible human being. It is, I shouldn't say was, he still is. And then he ends up getting a free agent deal with Buffalo to be the starter. So he played 50 games one of my years in Buffalo. So he worked for every inch that he got in the game. And he did it by being basically that character, hardworking guy that will do anything to help the team succeed. So that's a huge trait. It's a huge trait.
Talking about traits, moving more on the negative side a little bit. So what maybe is a red flag or a couple of red flags that jump out to you when you see a goalie? What's something that, I'm not sure if I'm going to take that guy on my team?
For me, again, body language is one. If you look really frustrated and you're slamming your stick, and to me, that's not needed. All you're doing is you're fueling the other team, and you're showing your team that you're rattled. You want competitive fire, but you don't want this over the top sideshow. So that's one thing. Body language and the way you act, especially when you're frustrated, is one thing for me. And then just basically, we've already talked about it, just basically how do you handle yourself every day? Do you enjoy being at the rink? How do people feel when they're around you? And that's a big thing for me from an off-ice standpoint, from a character standpoint. But anything on the ice, you can coach. I feel, and it's just. But if the athlete doesn't want to be coached or is very narrow-minded and too stubborn to listen, well, then they're kind of on their own, right? You can't really help them anyway. So that's a red flag for me. If you're uncoachable, and your body language is very, very negative all the time, that's something that is very difficult to change. as a coach, so, or a scout. But scout, you can recognize it. Coach, you have to work with it every day.
Yeah, 100%. And there's so many good players out there nowadays that if you got two players and one has a good attitude, great character guy that's going to fight for every battle, whereas another guy is just going to slam his stick, not be for the team, all that, it's an easy decision to make. So even if a player is slightly better, but the attitude's bad, they're probably still going to take the guy with a good attitude. So
hockey's still very much a team sport. Individuals within a team, it's a culture, right? And you want to have that positive culture with everybody kind of heading in the same direction. So that's something that does come into decisions whenever players are drafted, when players are signed, and so forth at all levels. So it's a team sport, and you need to be able to work within a team in order to be successful.
Yep, 100%. So maybe to end off the interview here, so maybe one more last piece of advice we might not have touched on today that you'd like to give to young players out there.
It has to be fun. And I think that's easy to say, but I watch everything from my kids' hockey to the NHL. If you're coming to work every day, I call it coming to work every day, but if you're coming to the rink to hockey every day and it feels like a job, or it feels like I have to be there and I don't want to be there, you're never going to get the most out of the experience. So it has to be fun. Make sure you enjoy it. I guess that's my big. Yes, everybody dreams of making the NHL, and it's hard work. Don't get me wrong, but these guys have fun along the way with it as well. The chips will fall where they may. You never know. You go all the time up and down, and you play well, you don't play well. You play at different levels. At the end of the day, it's got to be fun. Wherever you're playing, make it the most fun environment you can, and then that's how you're going to play to your best ability, I think. If it's not fun, you'll never play. Your natural talent will never completely come through. So enjoy it. Enjoy the ride. It's a roller coaster. There's lots of ups and downs, and you got to enjoy all of it and work your way through it.
100%. I think that's a great final message. I mean, some people say that, I've heard it a bunch of times, just have fun out there. And I struggle to see what that meant in the past. I was like, yeah, but I want to be intense, and it's a hard road, and there's a lot of ups and there's downs. But in my perspective, it's about enjoying that whole ride, the ups, the downs, the whole part of it, just finding a way to enjoy that whole experience, because it is you'll never get that back. It's a unique experience that you won't have when you're older, so I think hockey is a great sport, and if you can find the fun in it, it's awesome. And
you mentioned it, intense. Of course, you want to be focused, you want to be going, but that has to be enjoyable. Exactly. It can't be a focus I gotta go, to me, then you're never going to be able to reach your percent. So it's not hey, this is fun and you don't have to work hard or whatever. You have to train your mind that the focus is the fun part. The hard work is the fun part, because that's what you're going to get the most of. So it's all on how you kind of play it to yourself in your head. And to me, you have to be focused, and that should be fun. So that's why I say it.
Yeah, no, 100%. I totally agree on that. I think it's a great final message. Andrew, I know you're busy, so I won't hold you up any longer, but it was great having you. Really appreciate your time, and would love to have you again if you ever want to come on again.
Yeah, no, great. Anytime. It'd be great to chat more. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you so much. Take care. All right, guys, that is a wrap for the interview here. Hopefully you guys got a lot of value out of this. I know I definitely did, and took some gold nuggets of wisdom here to bring home with me from Andrew. So honestly, if you guys like this video, and if you want to see more interviews like this, more content like this, and more of these style of guests, definitely smash that like button if you haven't already. It lets us know that you like this content and you want to see more of these guys. Also too, if you're new here, consider hitting that subscribe button and notification bell so you never miss another video moving forward. If you have any comments, questions, anything you want to talk to us about or ask Andrew or anything like that, drop a comment down below or send us a private email at info@ahadvising.com and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. All right, guys, thanks so much for watching. We'll catch you on that next one.